city street. A passenger exits a parked car and steps directly into the path of oncoming traffic without looking. A moving car strikes him at speed. This tragic event serves as a basic but vital reminder.
At a car wash, a woman is cleaning her vehicle, which is parked on an inclined ramp without wheel chocks. The car suddenly begins to roll backward. The woman attempts to stop it, but is tragically caught and crushed between the moving vehicle and a wall. This incident underscores the absolute necessity of securing a vehicle on any incline. Always engage the parking brake and use wheel chocks to prevent unintended movement, especially when working around the vehicle. On a highway, a tanker truck begins emitting a thick cloud of orange smoke, signaling a dangerous chemical reaction. The driver pulls over, exits the cab, and climbs directly on top of the tanker to inspect the leak, exposing himself to the toxic fumes. Suddenly, the pressure builds, and a massive plume of gas erupts. When dealing with hazardous materials, the primary rule is to evacuate and establish a safe perimeter. Never approach a leaking or reacting chemical tanker. Immediately contact emergency services. What appears to be a dye works or processing facility. Men are working around large ground-level vats filled with steaming, boiling liquid. The work area is wet, cluttered, and lacks any protective railings around the open vats. One worker brings a bucket to the edge of one vat. He pours the contents into the vat, triggering an immediate and violent eruption. A huge cloud of steam or a splash of boiling liquid erupts, knocking him off his feet and directly into the scalding contents. His co-workers react in a panic, rushing to his aid and desperately trying to pull him from the vat. This tragedy highlights multiple failures. First, the violent reaction suggests a dangerous chemical mix or adding a liquid to a much hotter one, causing it to flash boil. Second, the complete lack of guardrails around open vats of hazardous liquid is a critical safety violation. Inside another paper mill, a worker stands on a bench next to a machine with large rollers, attempting to manually feed a sheet of starter paper into the mechanism. This forces him to place his hands extremely close to the dangerous in-running nip point. As he guides the paper, his hand is caught by the rollers. The machine, designed to pull with immense force, relentlessly drags his arm and then his entire body into the spinning drums. A co-worker on an upper level sees the accident and frantically runs to an emergency stop button, but the damage is already done. Manually feeding material into live rollers is an exceptionally high-risk activity. This process should be automated or performed using specialized tools that keep the operator's hands far away from the nip points. On a narrow city street, two men are walking next to a building. A third man on the sidewalk tries to warn them, but it's too late. High above, a poorly secured pallet of heavy bags, likely at a construction site, slips from its position. The entire load plummets to the ground, landing directly on top of the two pedestrians and burying them instantly. All overhead work, especially lifting operations, requires the area below to be completely cordoned off to prevent anyone from entering the drop zone. Inside a brightly lit beauty salon, clients are receiving treatments while an employee works at a shelf. The calm is shattered in an instant as a large truck, having lost control on the street outside, smashes through the glass storefront. The vehicle plows deep into the salon, sending debris flying and narrowly missing the terrified occupants who scramble for safety. This shocking incident is a reminder that even indoor spaces can be vulnerable to external traffic hazards, especially those located at street level. In a cluttered workshop, a man works near a large machine with an exposed, rapidly rotating flywheel. He's wearing a loose, untucked shirt, a critical mistake around this type of equipment. As he moves past the machine, the back of his shirt is snagged by the flywheel. He is instantly whipped around with incredible violence, spinning in the air as the machine wraps his clothing tighter and tighter around the axle. His co-workers rush in a panic to shut off the power, but the momentum continues to spin him violently. This is a textbook example of why loose clothing is forbidden around rotating machinery. It can be grabbed in an instant, leading to horrific injuries or death. All flywheels and drive shafts must be properly guarded. This onboard footage from a city bus captures the driver navigating through traffic. A passenger stands near the front, talking on the phone. Without warning, a vehicle from the oncoming lane swerves directly into the bus's path, resulting in a devastating head-on collision. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the windshield and sending the passenger flying violently forward. The aftermath shows the complete destruction of the bus's front end. This is a brutal reminder of the immense forces involved in high-speed collisions and the importance of defensive driving and constant vigilance on the road. Inside a mobile MRI trailer, a technician is in the control room while an elderly patient using a metal walker is brought into the scanning room. As the patient gets close to the MRI machine, its powerful magnetic field suddenly activates, violently pulling the walker and the patient with it into the machine. This is a terrifying illustration of a fundamental MRI safety rule. No metallic objects are allowed near the machine while it is operational. Strict screening protocols are mandatory to prevent such a dangerous event. At a tire repair shop, a group of mechanics is gathered around a large truck tire that is being inflated. Without warning, the tire fails and explodes with devastating force. The blast wave throws the men violently in all directions. This type of catastrophic failure is a known risk with high-pressure tires. To prevent injury, such tires must always be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive force. An industrial worker performs hot work near large storage tanks. The sparks suddenly ignite flammable vapors in the area, causing a massive explosion. This highlights the critical need for hot work permits, which require testing the atmosphere for flammable gases and clearing the area of combustibles before starting. A brightly decorated truck becomes stuck while attempting to cross a set of railway tracks. Several people on the ground notice the impending danger as a train approaches at high speed. Despite their frantic attempts to signal, there is not enough time for the train to stop. The locomotive collides with the truck, obliterating it in an instant. This tragic incident is a stark reminder to never stop a vehicle on a railway crossing for any reason.
A three-wheeled taxi parks beside an open manhole. As a passenger exits with her dog, she falls directly into the uncovered sewer, while her dog safely jumps aside. This incident underscores a critical lesson. Always be aware of ground-level hazards. Open manholes must be clearly marked and barricaded to prevent such tragic falls.
A woman on a dirt road is struck from behind by a large road grader. The operator's visibility was completely obstructed by the machine's blind spots. This tragic event shows why spotters are mandatory for heavy equipment, and pedestrians must never assume they have been seen. A worker makes a fatal error by leaning into an active industrial milling machine. It suddenly cycles. the heavy head descending and crushing him against the workpiece. This tragic event demonstrates the critical need for lockout-tagout procedures. Power must be completely cut and locked before any maintenance is performed to prevent accidental activation. A man looks under the hood of his car, parked facing a wall. The vehicle, seemingly left unsecured or suffering a mechanical failure, suddenly rolls forward, pinning him against the building. This highlights a crucial safety rule. When working on a vehicle, always ensure the parking brake is set, the transmission is in park, and wheels are chocked to prevent any unintended movement. Inside a factory, operations seem normal until a violent explosion rips through the area, creating a massive fireball. This type of event often stems from the ignition of combustible dust or gas. Strict air quality monitoring and dust control systems are essential to prevent such catastrophic incidents. A worker in a steel warehouse stands on a stack of beams to guide an overhead crane. The crane begins to lift a long I-beam, but the load is improperly secured and wildly imbalanced. As it rises, it swings uncontrollably, striking the worker with immense force and pinning him. This is a fatal mistake in rigging. Loads must be perfectly balanced and secured, and all personnel must remain outside the line of fire, the area within the potential swing radius of any suspended load. A man on a flatbed truck directs a forklift operator lifting a tall, unstable stack of heavy tires. As the operator attempts to place the load, it loses its balance and topples over, crushing the man who had no time to react. Forklift loads should always be kept as low to the ground and as stable as possible. Stacking items this high creates an unacceptable risk of tipping. A worker attempts to clear a jam on a large machine with an exposed, spinning flywheel while it is still running. His clothing gets caught, and he is violently pulled into the mechanism. His horrified co-workers rush to shut off the power and desperately try to free him from the still-moving parts. This devastating accident is a graphic demonstration of why machine guards must always be in place, and why lockout or tagout procedures are non-negotiable. No maintenance should ever be performed on live equipment. In a busy workshop, a worker is bent over, focused on a task near a large piece of industrial machinery. Several colleagues are nearby, but no one is supervising the immediate area. Without warning, a massive, vertically positioned component of the machine, likely a heavy press or mold, detaches from its housing. It pivots downward with immense force, crushing the unsuspecting worker underneath its weight. Colleagues rush over in a panic, but the damage is already done. This catastrophic failure points to a severe lack of mechanical integrity and inadequate safety checks. Regular, thorough inspections of all machine parts, especially those under load, are non-negotiable. Furthermore, implementing lockout-tagout procedures during work in close proximity to such equipment is essential to prevent unexpected activation or mechanical failure. Inside a textile factory, several workers move between rows of massive industrial looms. The area is a complex web of rapidly moving threads and rotating components. One worker carries a long metal rod across the aisle. As he walks, the end of the rod he's carrying gets snagged by the machinery. Instead of letting go, he tries to pull it free. The machine's power is overwhelming, and it instantly pulls him off his feet, dragging him violently into the rotating mechanism. His body is pulled completely into the machine as his colleagues look on in horror, helpless to stop the equipment. This incident is a stark reminder of the dangers of loose items and improper material handling around rotating machinery. The key safety lesson is to maintain situational awareness and never fight a machine's power. If something gets caught, the immediate reaction should be to let go and hit the nearest emergency stop. Proper machine guarding should also be in place to prevent contact with moving parts. Two workers are positioned near a large industrial rolling press. One worker, in a blue sweater, leans over the machine's in-feed area. seemingly trying to adjust or clear something while it's operational. While he is leaning far into the machine, the powerful rollers suddenly activate its speed. He is instantly caught and dragged headfirst into the mechanism, disappearing completely between the massive cylinders in a fraction of a second. This is a devastating example of why lockout-tagout procedures are critical. Before any maintenance or adjustment, the machine must be completely de-energized and the power source locked out. Reaching into an active machine is a fatal gamble. In a large fabrication hangar, several workers are gathered around a massive, partially constructed metal hull section. High above, an overhead crane is maneuvering another heavy, curved steel plate. Suddenly, the rigging fails. The multi-ton steel plate detaches from the crane and plummets directly onto the structure below, striking the workers who have no time to react. This incident highlights a catastrophic failure in overhead lifting safety. It's crucial that all rigging is properly inspected and rated for the load. Most importantly, a designated exclusion zone must be strictly enforced directly below any suspended load. At a sorting facility, a worker stands at the base of a steep conveyor belt. His clothing gets snagged by the moving belt, and he's instantly pulled off his feet and carried upwards, unable to break free. This demonstrates the risk of entanglement. Loose clothing is extremely hazardous near conveyors, which must have accessible emergency stop cords along their full length. Two men are feeding large sheets into a green industrial machine, while one worker is positioned at the entrance to adjust the material. The machine's heavy upper assembly suddenly collapses, crushing him against the lower section. This catastrophic mechanical failure highlights the need for rigorous maintenance schedules. Hydraulic systems and structural supports on heavy equipment must be inspected routinely by qualified personnel to prevent such a sudden, fatal collapse. Inside an industrial laundry plant, a worker in a blue uniform is working between two large, rotating machines. He appears to get his arm caught in one of the machines, which then violently pulls him in and spins his entire body around its axis multiple times with incredible speed. Rotating shafts and rollers are unforgiving. This incident shows a complete failure of machine guarding. All nip points and moving parts must be fully enclosed to make human contact impossible. A worker in a workshop is operating a machine that winds material onto a large, spinning roll. He stands very close to the rotating mechanism while it is in operation. His arm becomes entangled in the material being wound onto the roll. In an instant, the machine's torque pulls him in. Wrapping his entire body around the spool at high speed, he is spun around violently before the machine comes to a stop. This is a tragic illustration of the dangers of unguarded, rotating equipment. The primary safety failure is the lack of guarding to prevent access to the point of operation. Operators must never wear loose clothing and should use tools to manipulate materials, rather than hands, to prevent entanglement. In a foundry, workers are near a large, open pit filled with cooling liquid. An overhead crane with an electromagnet is moving large metal billets. As the crane moves a massive metal block over the workers, the electromagnet unexpectedly deactivates. The huge block plummets down, striking one worker and knocking him directly into the pit, where he disappears beneath the surface. This incident reveals multiple severe safety violations. First, the rule of never standing under a suspended load was broken. An exclusion zone is mandatory for all overhead lifts. Second, using an electromagnet to move material over personnel is exceptionally dangerous, as a power failure can lead to an instant release of the load. Finally, open pits must be clearly marked and guarded with railings to prevent falls. In a busy shipping yard, a forklift operator carrying a large crate turns too sharply. The forks swing out and collide with the cabin of a parked three-wheeled vehicle, striking the driver inside. This emphasizes the need for clear traffic management and heightened situational awareness in areas with heavy machinery. On a construction site, a worker bends over, unaware of a nearby skid steer. The operator loses control of the pallet on the forks, which falls and strikes the worker. This shows why exclusion zones are critical. Never work beneath a suspended load. A man lies on a dump truck's chassis directly beneath the raised bed to perform maintenance. The hydraulic system fails, and the multi-ton bed slams down, crushing him instantly. This is a fatal oversight. Never work under a raised load without first securing it with certified safety props designed to prevent collapse. A man prepares to lower the heavy steel ramps on a flatbed trailer. He stands directly in the path of the second ramp as he unlatches it. He is unable to control its immense weight as it swings down, striking him with brutal force and pinning him to the ground. This equipment is far too heavy to be managed by one person without mechanical aids or a proper, safe procedure. He should have stood to the side, not in the direct path of the ramp's descent, and used a system to control its lowering speed. At a refuse site, a small girl runs up to a large, half-full commercial dumpster and playfully hangs from its edge. Her small weight is just enough to upset the container's delicate balance. The heavy dumpster begins to slowly tip over, gathering unstoppable momentum before it crashes to the ground, trapping the child underneath. Other bystanders don't seem to notice the immediate danger. This is a heartbreaking tragedy that underscores a vital lesson. Industrial work sites and heavy equipment are not playgrounds. Heavy containers, even when they seem stable, can pose a significant tipping hazard. Constant supervision and restricted access are paramount to preventing children from entering these dangerous areas. A worker in a warehouse is using a manual pallet jack to move a massive, vertically stored roll of paper. As he pulls the jack, the immense roll becomes unstable, tips over, and falls directly on top of him, completely crushing him against the floor. Storing heavy, cylindrical objects vertically without proper chocks or racking is extremely unsafe. This incident was caused by improper storage. Such items must be stored horizontally in approved racks, or, if vertical, securely braced to prevent tipping. A worker is near a conveyor when a heavy metal beam falls from above, striking him directly. This highlights the ever-present danger of falling objects. Hard hats are a last line of defense. The primary focus must be on securing all overhead materials and equipment before allowing personnel into the area. On a quiet street, a person is sweeping near the curb while another stands nearby on his phone. A black SUV begins reversing down the road towards them. The driver, clearly not looking, continues to reverse at a steady pace. The SUV strikes the sweeper, knocking them to the ground and running them over with its rear wheel before stopping. This incident is a tragic outcome of distracted driving and a lack of situational awareness. Drivers, especially when reversing, must always check their surroundings. Pedestrians, in turn, must remain vigilant, as relying on drivers to always see you is a dangerous assumption. At a construction site, an excavator operator uses the machine's bucket to lift a heavy metal ladder. A ground worker stands directly in the path of the operation, attempting to guide the load with his hands. As the operator lifts the ladder, it becomes unstable, slips from the bucket's grip, and pivots downward, striking the ground worker. This is a clear case of improper lifting procedure. An excavator bucket is not designed for lifting such objects. Proper slings and rigging should have been used. Furthermore, the ground worker should never have placed himself in the line of fire where the load could fall. In this highly automated aluminum casting facility, a worker in a red hard hat is using a hoist near an active industrial robot. Crucially, the worker is freely moving within the robot's maximum reach. There are no physical safety cages or light curtains separating the man from the machine. He is sharing the robot's workspace, relying only on his own awareness. The worker places a stack of ingots and turns his back to the robot, walking directly into its programmed path. The robot swings a heavy, loaded basket, colliding with the worker with brutal force and throwing him across the floor. The robot, oblivious, completes its cycle as the man lies motionless. This is a catastrophic failure of robotic safety integration. A robot's work envelope is an absolute no-go zone for unprotected personnel. This area must be protected by physical fences with interlocked gates or presence-sensing devices, like light curtains that trigger an immediate shutdown if crossed. Assuming a worker can safely work around an industrial robot is a fatal mistake. This incident was an inevitability caused by a fundamentally flawed system design that failed to separate human and machine workspaces. In a stamping plant, workers operate a large industrial press. One man reaches deep inside the press to adjust material. At that moment, the press cycles, trapping his arm. He cries out, and his colleagues react instantly, rushing to hit the emergency stop and attempting to reverse the machine. While the co-worker's quick reaction is commendable, the incident should never have happened. Reaching into the point of operation of an active press is extremely dangerous. Safety systems like light curtains, two-hand controls, and physical guards are designed specifically to make this impossible, indicating a severe breakdown in safety protocols. In a container port, a large reach stacker is lifting a container from a trailer. The machine becomes critically unbalanced, causing it to slowly but unstoppably tip over and crash onto its side. This demonstrates a critical loss of stability. Reach stacker operators must adhere to strict load charts, accounting for weight, boom extension, and angle. The ground must also be firm and level for all heavy lifts. Exceeding the machine's capacity or operating on an unstable surface is a direct cause of such catastrophic tip-over incidents.